Want your podcast and videocast to be seen, heard, found, and rewarded in this noisy digital world? Then join podcast industry experts Tom Hazzard and Tracy Hazzard as they debunk all that outdated and bad advice you've been getting from the podcasting gurus and share what actually works today, bringing you those smart cut tactics proven to feed thousands of brands, blogs, videos, podcasts, and social channels with bingeable original voices like yours. Get ready to feed your brand.
Hey everyone, welcome to Feed Your Brand. I'm Tom Hazzard, your host, solo today, going through a topic that I have to say is really in my wheelhouse of expertise. I kind of geek out sometimes on the tech of podcasting. I'll try not to take you down too deep a tech rabbit hole today. Actually, I want to keep it as non-tech as I can, but inevitably this topic does require considering technical issues. The topic I'm going to talk about today is Zoom alternatives, recording platforms compared, pros and cons, and Podetize picks, our picks here at Podetize. Now, for those of you that are new, you may not know, Podetize is in addition to being one of the best podcast hosting platforms in the industry, we are also one of the largest done-for-you production service companies. And so we get recordings every week from hundreds and hundreds of podcasters who've recorded their episodes, and they're giving them to us to edit, produce audio and video, and make them sound and look their best. So we've seen it all. We have received recordings from every different software and platform imaginable. So I'm going to share with you some of the what I believe are the best ones, and also others that, even if I don't think they're the best, I think are worth mentioning because they may be a good fit for some people. And, when I set up about talking about pros and cons, there are pros and cons, but I also like to think of this a little bit more as there is a software that's the right fit for you, a software or a recording device, if not a software, and there are differences, and I'll talk about that. There is a software or device that is a right fit for you, and you may need to test a few out and try them in order to figure out what is best for you, although I will provide you some, suggestions, some advice here today. I think if you really break it down to your needs, and maybe the needs of your guests, if you're doing guest interview podcasts, or the needs of your situation, if you're interviewing people in person or always remotely. When you start looking at all these things, I find that you need to strike the right balance between ease of use for you, the host who's going to be doing it all the time. You're having a guest on, yeah, maybe a different one every episode, but they only do it once. You do it every time. So ease of use for you, considering ease of use for your guest or guests, but also quality and cost. Because there are not all of the softwares have a cost associated with them. Some are free, but then, the ease of use part might, be a little bit of a sacrifice there. So let's talk about them. And I want to go through first some of the most common ones. And common is, I don't mean that to be a negative. I guess maybe I should say some of the best ones. And then some other alternatives to consider. Okay. So this is in no particular order. I want you to know I am not expressing favoritism in the order in which I'm talking about these different software platforms and or devices. I'm going to start with StreamYard because I hear a lot of people asking me about StreamYard lately. My feeling on StreamYard is this: if you're always going to be recording your episodes live, like right now, I am live streaming this as I'm recording it. Those of you listening to the podcast or watching the video on YouTube a couple weeks later, when it's published as a podcast, are seeing the fully edited, polished, published version. But I'm actually recording it live and streaming it live onto different social platforms right now. Now, I am not using StreamYard as I'm doing this. I'm using Zoom. I will talk about Zoom later, but Zoom has become a a pretty common tool for a lot of people. And I want to talk about Zoom alternatives first. I will come back to Zoom, though, in a little bit later in this episode. But StreamYard's particular reason for existing in the first place is to stream live to social media. So if that is one of the things that you want to do, stream live with all your episodes, or at least the majority of your episodes, then StreamYard might be a good choice for you and you should check it out. I have used it both as a panelist and as just a attendee. I've never had a StreamYard account, I will admit, so I haven't gone through setting it up. But I do find that if you're doing live stream content and you want to be seeing comments and maybe reacting to them live as you're recording, which as a podcaster, quite honestly, I don't really recommend because they can distract you and take your derail your train of thought and what you want to be achieving in your podcast. But there are a lot of people that have a live show format and they are repurposing that as a podcast, and the authenticity, the sort of realness of it is part of what they want to achieve and maybe what part of their audience wants. So that's perfectly fine. But if you do want to be seeing those comments live as you're recording, as you're streaming, honestly, I think that StreamYard is a very good choice for that. If going live is something you're going to do occasionally, then you may not want to use StreamYard or not use it all the time. Now, of course, then you get into the pros and cons of, are you using more than one software? Are they each paid? You have to pay for both, and that may be something you don't want to do to increase your expense. But with all of these platforms, I'm not going to go down a very deep technical rabbit hole of this one has higher quality video than that one. This one has higher quality audio than that one. I mean, I will talk about that generally, but I'm not specifically trying to check a bunch of boxes here to say this one's technically better than that one, you should use it. I'm not approaching it from that deep of an engineering view. It's really more of a use case, ease of use, overall quality. And I think that StreamYard is capable of good, certainly acceptable video quality for the majority of shows. So again, major point of StreamYard, going live while you're doing it. It's native to the program. It's what they've always done. If that's what you want to do, then that may be a good one for you. Okay. Now let's talk about Zencastr. I have a lot of experience with Zencastr back in my earliest days of podcasting. Zencastr was a brand new software and it was in beta, and I was one of the beta users. So I have a lot of experience with it. Although I will admit, it has come a long, long way since those days in, 2014, when it was pretty glitchy, but the company was transparent about it. I actually would have an occasional call and or direct emails with one of the founders who was coding it, and I'd give him some feedback and report a glitch, and they were always working on updates. And so I think Zencastr, the company behind it and the people behind it are great, and they have every great intention of providing a very high quality recording software. And a lot of their tech was built specifically around making it a lot easier to use, not only to get the best quality, but also for things like uploading to the cloud when you're done, or downloading the files when you're done, even doing some processing of them. And now Zencastr has gotten to the point of supporting video. They record video as well as audio. So they keep pushing and they're trying to be a very high quality. And I think I have no reason to dispute they are a very high quality solution. I don't use it anymore for a couple of reasons, and it really has to do with ease of use and workflow, not only for me, but also for my guests that I would have on the show. And the fact that I do occasionally live stream episodes, or for certain shows, I live stream all the time, and other ones I don't. So I think if you want a highly technically capable software to use for recording your podcast, then I think Zencastr is one you need to consider and try out for yourself. Like I said, I don't use it anymore, but that does not mean I'm saying others should not. It's not the best fit for me right now. But highly capable, totally respect the company, like what they're doing, and I certainly hope they succeed. I think they have a good place in this industry and deserve to be under consideration for all podcasters. So that's how I feel about that. Let's talk about Riverside.fm. Okay, Riverside has a very good reputation, and they do, I think, a very good job of marketing, and they position themselves as the highest quality. That's the reputation they have anyway, from my perspective, as the highest quality. They are a costly, they're a paid platform. I won't say they're the most expensive. I don't know that, but they're certainly among the most expensive. But again, are pitching very high quality. Your guests log in to their system as if you were getting into a Zoom call, or whatever other like a or a like a Google Meet or whatever. I mean, you're using their service to connect with the guests. They have a link they come into, and separated audio tracks and high quality video. Now, that was also, I believe, true of Zencaster. They do similar with that. But with Riverside, they're the ones that I think are considered top quality, and the other tools, softwares that are out there are all sort of trying to compete with that reputation of being among the best. Now, having said that, again, I mentioned we support hundreds and hundreds of podcasters every week submitting their recordings to us for done for you production, and we have a good number of customers doing it on Riverside. I would say maybe about 10% of our customers are on Riverside. And we have actually, as a company, experienced some technical problems with the recordings. And I know that can happen with any software. I've experienced technical recordings with Zencaster when I was using them. I experienced technical recording problems with Zoom and StreamYard. So I'm not trying to say Riverside is alone in this. I just have experienced some strange ones we have as a company that have not happened anywhere else. And one of those that concerned me the most, and it bears a little mentioning, but again, every software company I know is working to improve their software, and Riverside may very well have addressed this issue. Maybe it doesn't happen anymore, but I am going to mention it. We've had customers that they conduct their interview. They I'm in Zoom right now, live streaming this. I'm not talking with anybody. Usually I'm talking with my co-host Tracy, who's not available today, and we would be having a discussion and everything's fine. Well, what I've experienced with customers on Riverside is occasionally they have that session with their guest, record that interview, and it sounds and looks completely normal to all of the participants. And what I mean by that is they had no indication anything was wrong with the internet connection, with the sound and video being streamed in real time. Everything seemed fine to them. But when we got the recordings, there were some serious problems in internet dropouts where there were parts missing from one of the participants, and also improper speed sync of the video in particular, but also the audio. And it was very odd. It was something that could not be fixed. It's, sometimes if you have sort of time compression in an audio file, you can stretch it out to be what the real time was and fix it. These glitches were things that couldn't be fixed. And our customer was very unhappy when we report to them, hey, the video and audio from this one participant is not usable. It doesn't match the others, and we cannot fix it. We can't make it work. And we did some technical research on it, and on Riverside's site, and reached out to support, and unfortunately this episode was unusable. And the customer had a hard time understanding it. It was like, well, wait a second. We had that session and we heard them, we saw them, and it was recording it. Why could anything be wrong? The interesting thing is the customer never looked at the recordings to check that they were, good, as they expected they were, because of their experience conducting the episode recording live. And there was sort of this disbelief. What do you mean there's a problem with it? Well, we shared it back with them, and then they could see too. So that kind of thing was very, very concerning. And I didn't expect that with a what is supposed to be the highest quality of service of a product with Riverside. So I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, and I really am not trying to beat up on Riverside. It is a high quality tool. A lot of people use it and love it and swear by it, and that's just great. If that's you, wonderful. And I think if you're considering a software to use, they should be on your list to check out and try. But again, I'm going to keep coming back home to, is the tool for you producing the right quality you need? Is the ease of use workflow for you manageable and easy to do? And is the cost acceptable to you? Let's talk about another one that's also very popular in the podcasting world and has been for, gosh, I want to think at least 5+ years, maybe more, is Squadcast. Squadcast was developed by podcasters for podcasters, started out as an audio recording platform only, and I've used it and was top notch, very high quality audio platform. It also now does video, and we knew years ago their plan was always, hey, get audio solid, worked out, and then move into video. And they did that, and certainly are providing video. And my understanding is the video recordings are very high quality. But again, you want to come to, what are you looking for in a recording software? And when you do video, there are some limitations to their system in video because they were not created as a video recording platform first. So, for instance, one of the limitations is you can only have so many people. I think three, it's either three total people or three total guests, I forget, on a Squadcast recording. And I know we have some customers that there are sometimes, between 4 and 6 hosts or participants involved in an episode, and that won't work for them. So again, I think Squadcast is a great product, understand a lot about the people that launched it, and they've done a very good job with it. And maybe it's a good fit for you, if you're always either recording just with one guest, or even if you have a co-host and recording one guest or maybe two, it might work very well for you. But there might end up being some situations that are not going to use that it's not going to work for, rather. And you need to be aware of that going in, because for certain episodes you might need a backup software you're going to use. And is that something else you're going to have to pay for? And then you weigh the option of, am I paying for two tools? Or is there one tool that would do everything for me and I can only pay for one tool? So think about that. Now, there are some others out there that are new and up and coming. There's one called Iris that is getting a lot of attention. That's worth mentioning. I don't have personal experience with that, but it's got an impressive number of people using it. It's hard. This is not an episode where I'm reviewing every platform, okay? That's not my intention today, or else I would have, run down a list and had 20 that I'm going through, and this would be a much more technical discussion, a much more technical episode that I'd be recording. I'm not, how do I say, at Podetize, I always tell people we are recording platform agnostic. Okay. I mean, I have one I use, and I'm going to tell you what that is, what I use all the time now because of my workflow and ease of use for me. I'm going to get to that. But this is not about ranking them or making them the best. I think every podcaster needs to investigate and try as a lot of these different platforms until you find the one that really works well for you. That is a fit issue, and assessing what's the right fit for you. So that's my overall big message today. I want to talk about offline recording, though, and different ways to record that are not a tool that you would use necessarily to engage with someone remotely. Okay, you'd be recording people either in person or just only recording yourself. Because if you're doing that, you really don't need an online service to record high quality audio and video. That can be done right on your local computer or use another device. So I'm going to first talk about recording on the computer, completely free. a tool like Audacity that many of you do-it-yourselfers will use to edit your episodes is also a tool you can use to record. You're not connected necessarily to anybody across the internet, just recording yourself, or you could be recording more than one person right there with you and have, a couple different microphones with the right inputs going into, interface going into your computer. You can do that. I have used Audacity for a lot of things. I am not a full-time audio editor. I know enough to be dangerous and to do a few things when I really need to. And the Audacity is a very good tool, but it's very much a do-it-yourself tool, and it's something you have to spend a lot of time getting used to how to use it to do the different things you need to do. It lets you do an awful lot of things, including recording, and you can do that. Similar, if you're on a Mac platform. Now, Audacity, I think, is cross-platform, but if you're on a Mac platform, GarageBand is very popular for recording. It allows you to put separate mics into the computer as long as you got enough ports and user interface. GarageBand will recognize more than one microphone, and a lot of these other softwares I'm talking about won't. They'll use the system software, or they'll allow only one, if you're using a USB microphone, to be connected to them at a time. And in most use cases, that's plenty. But if you're recording more than one person in person locally, then, and you want a separate mic for each person, which you should for audio quality, want that. A tool like GarageBand, and probably even Audacity, I'm going to throw that in the ring here too, will allow you to do that. It accepts multiple mic inputs, okay? And I've used it. And, we do live events, or certainly did a lot more before the pandemic, but we still do some live events where we will do at event podcast recording, and you don't need to connect over the internet to anybody to do that. You just have to, have the equipment, use that software, plug in your microphones, have two people across the table from each other, whether it's in a lounge table or sitting at a conference table, whatever. We used it always more in a lounge sort of setting where you're holding your mic right up to your mouth. And GarageBand works great for that. And it's a perfectly good tool because it will record the separated tracks. It will recognize those multiple mics. Now, that's using a software. So there are multiple softwares. I'll tell you, I've even used the voice memo app on my iPhone, and that's actually resident in the Mac OS on your laptop too, if you want to do that. If I've just recorded a solo episode and let's say I didn't have a good internet connection, then I can use that local software. And there is a similar software on the Mac and Windows that will do that if you're going to record with video. There are free tools available on your computer, and if that's easiest for you and you don't want to spend any money, by all means, experiment with them, test them out, make sure you understand what kind of quality they're capable of recording, and maybe that'll work for you. So there are some low cost, inexpensive options. I think it's worth mentioning. I now want to mention the last option for recording your podcast, and this is specifically audio now. If you're always recording people in person, or let me say most of the time you're recording people in person, even if, and there are people that we support where co-hosts are always in person, and they're either recording episodes alone, two of them in the same room. I used to do that all the time with Tracy on our, WTFFF 3D printing podcast. We're always in the same room together, used really sophisticated equipment that nobody needs to buy anymore, but large mixing boards to do things. And actually, back in the day, I'll give you a little tip. We used to use Skype. We've been podcasting that long. Skype was like state of the art for remote recording at the time. And you know what it was? We even bought a special, kind of like a plugin, because before Microsoft bought Skype, you could do that. They had different utilities or plugins that would get into the Skype software, and it allowed what it did really was recorded the separate audio tracks that we all today know are very important, and just about every software does for you now, or at least the good ones. But yeah, every person we interviewed had to have a Skype account, and then you dial them on the phone through Skype. I mean, you remember those days. So we've come a long way in podcasting and in technology since then. But when you're going to record in person, and we do still have a lot of customers that have co-hosts that are together all the time. They may interview someone remotely. but they want the recording of the two of them in person to be the best it can be. And one of those tools that I want to mention is a Zoom, not to be confused with Zoom.us, the online meeting platform. I'm talking about Zoom, the electronic hardware company that makes one of the standards for a lot of years has been the Zoom H6 digital audio recorder. There are newer versions too that have different capabilities, but a Zoom H6 you could plug half a dozen separate microphones into, have, if you have six of you, and I know we have one show that has, I think, six co-hosts at times that are all in the same room, you can all be sitting around the table, each holding your own microphone and recording a separate audio track for each of you. That's really next level, very high quality audio recording for when people are in person. And we use those tools, Zoom H6, also out at events when we're recording, on location. So those are things that you can consider in certain situations. And I think you should if you have that use case and that need. If you don't, then there's no reason to spend that much money. Zoom H6 is like, a little less than $400. And then you got to have, a separate mic for everybody. Whereas if you're always recording people remotely, your computer and one USB mic for, $60 to $80 is really all you need, high quality wise. And I'm actually going to put in the blog post for this episode my recommendation for the highest quality microphone that won't break your bank. Just a little bonus. I have a whole nother blog post that actually does take a deep dive into microphones, reviews them technically, and gives you ranks and pricing, and that'll also be linked in that blog post. But there's one that I provide to my customers when they launch a podcast and what I buy, and I'm going to share that with you. So don't forget to go to the blog post for this at podcastersunited.org to get that info. So hardware, physical hardware, you can record things without any service. You just buy it once. I used to have a little digital audio recorder by a company called Roland that Tracy and I used for all of our WTFFF podcast recordings when we're in person. And we used a mixing board to get those separate tracks. But you actually now the Zoom H6 does a better job of that. That there's again quality, cost, size. If you're traveling with it, is it bulky or not? There's a lot of things to consider. Lots of great equipment out there, but most of us podcasters today, the equipment we need is very inexpensive, and most of us already have the major piece of equipment we need, which is a computer. Literally, the microphone that I stock and I give to my new podcasters is on Amazon for $59 prime most of the time. High quality. I'm using it right now, even though you don't see it on the video. It's just off of my field of view. But it doesn't take a lot of money to be able to record a podcast. With all these remote recording services, which I love and believe in, obviously, if you're going to podcast seriously, you need to pay for one, because I'm going to now share with you, I do use Zoom, and I know we're calling this Zoom alternatives, and I've spent the majority of this episode talking about those alternatives. While we are recording platform agnostic, Zoom is my best fit for us for workflow, ease of use, and cost. Now, and by the way, it's capable of full 1080i HD. Most people don't know that because in the normal Zoom settings, it says 720i and that's it. But if you read the fine print on Zoom's website, they will unlock for you 1080i recording on a paid account. They just don't tell you that. And probably because if every customer they had did it, it might put a serious strain on their servers. So I understand from a technical perspective why they haven't. But all you got to do is reach out to Zoom support either through chat on their website or through email and say, hey, here's my name, here's my account. I would like to be able to record in 1080i video, HD video, and they will enable that feature. And then you log into your Zoom account online and set up whatever kind of meeting you have for recording, and they'll give you the 1080i. You can record your videos in 1080i. I've done it. I'm not using it right this moment. I use it for certain meeting types, especially my webinars I use it for. But Zoom, quite honestly, since the pandemic, I know a lot of people scoff at Zoom. A lot of podcasters are going to say, Tom, you are nuts. You are wrong. Zoom is crap, right? I know they'll say that. I don't believe that. I've experienced it. I've been using it a long time now. There was a day 5 years ago when Zoom was not what it is today. That's true. When the pandemic hit and everybody started using remote services like Zoom for meetings, that Zoom realized, whoa, we have an opportunity here. And they stepped it up. And that's where they started doing separated audio tracks that are available now for both local and cloud recording. And then also different capabilities with the video and lots of other features that I'm not, I'm not trying to make this an endorsement nor an advertisement for Zoom. I'm just telling you what I use and works for us. And to me, the biggest reasons that I use Zoom is because of now in the cloud recording. And I don't know of any other software really that does this to the extent Zoom does. Because every podcast I record is now also video and it's put out on YouTube. And honestly, of all of our customers, about 75% of them are also putting out video on YouTube for full-length videos of their podcasts in a YouTube podcasts playlist. If you don't have one of those, you need to go find out about that when you're putting video on YouTube and use that. But if you're going to edit your video, if you're doing anything other than live streaming it and then putting that same live stream up on YouTube, which a lot of people do, and that's wonderful. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Okay. I'm not putting that down in any way, but some of us like to edit our videos and make them the best that they can be. If we have a team that edits them or we do it for our customers. So when you record locally on Zoom, you get whatever you record. Like right now, I'm in what they call the speaker view. The full frame is me, one person. And if Tracy were here with me, we'd be talking back and forth. It would be switching between us, right? And then they have the gallery view. That's when you have more than one person. They're both side by side. And eventually, with enough people, it looks like the Brady Bunch. And I know I'm dating myself here. But if y'all remember the Brady Bunch with the 9 squares, I mean, you can do that in Zoom, right? Well, when now Zoom has stepped up their cloud recording so that when you record in the cloud, and again, this is only going to be important for those of you that record video and are trying to put a high quality video in the Zoom cloud, it gives you multiple videos of your meeting. You get the speaker view, you get the gallery view, you get the shared screen view. If you've shared any slides or, you shared your screen at all for anything, you get a separate recording just of those. Then you actually get a recording of the speaker view with the shared slides, our shared screens, and the gallery view with the shared screens. So as a video editor, you can have these 3, 5, or more different video tracks and you can switch between them. And that makes it much easier to edit and remove things when you can switch between those different views. Creates a much more dynamic video. So that's part of why I'm a fan of Zoom, but also it's just become so common. It's kind of like, to me, it's the Coca-Cola of recording softwares. Everybody knows it. Everybody's used it. You click one link and boom, you're in a meeting. So from a guest ease of use perspective, you're there. And then for me, I will say selfishly, as a company, we use Zoom for a whole lot of things. We use Zoom for our phones for the company. We use Zoom for our team chat that's like Slack. I mean, Zoom has a lot of other things that they do. So as a company, we're all into Zoom and it's just easier for us. And so since there's no technical drawbacks from my perspective to recording in Zoom, I use it for everything. Do I admit that maybe my audio would be a little higher quality as a WAV file recorded in another software or on another device? I'll admit that. Sure, might be. But it all gets reduced to an MP3 file that's compressed at the end of the day. So it's much better to use a high quality microphone and high quality camera to make that raw recording the best it can be. And then it can be edited into a completely professional podcast. So that's my feeling about Zoom, just to sort of close that up. But Zoom alternatives are out there. They are real, depending on your budget, your technical capabilities, or maybe your technical naivete, as the case may be. These things are going to determine what you want to use and what you don't want to use. So I've shared with you some alternatives, some pros and cons, or really some fit issues to think about. And they are for you to take that information, inform yourself, go try some things out, find what works for you. Here's my other big message. Do not let any producer, if you're using someone else to edit your stuff, your audio, your video, you're not doing it yourself. Do not let someone like that dictate what you use. I've heard some podcasters say, oh, my editor requires I use Riverside, or my editor requires I use Zencaster. To me, it's a bunch of garbage. Any good editor, any good producer can take a recording or all the recordings from any platform and produce you the best quality podcast possible from it. You're always going to have limitations from recordings. And then, of course, your guest, you can't always control their recording environment. What microphone are they using? Are they even using a good quality microphone? You're always going to have things like that. The host quality should always be the best, in my opinion. Listeners will forgive lesser qualities for guests. If it gets too bad, I'll refuse to record it with them. If it's really going to be that distracting and the message of the story is not going to come through, I'm like, time out. Let's do this another day when you can be in a quieter place or maybe have a better microphone. I've only had to do that 2 or 3 times in 1,500 episodes I've recorded. So it doesn't happen that much. But yeah, you don't need to use any one particular thing just to accommodate someone else. Now, if they're providing you full service and there's a workflow thing on their side, that's something you can consider. But from a technical perspective, I wouldn't let them dictate that to me anyway. So for what that's worth. All right. So, one other thing about Zoom, I mean, just like, again, not a big plug for Zoom, but I'm going live to all the platforms on Zoom, just like StreamYard does. Now, I can't see the comments. That's my con, right? That's my drawback to doing it. I have actually an employee monitoring this who can see comments and if there's a question that comes in from social, or whatever, or posting links up there. So I can't see it. So again, pros and cons, right? I am going live to all those places through Zoom. Zoom doesn't have the capability itself. I've signed up for repurpose.io, I think it is, and that is something else I'm paying for that kind of integrates in and plugs into Zoom to allow me to go live. StreamYard, it's all native. It's all a part of it, right? So that's a benefit of using theirs. You're not having to pay for another tool. But I'm so entrenched in Zoom, it made sense for me to pay for that other additional service that works with Zoom. All right, so there you go. A little bit about Tom's use case and preferences for recording. But again, they're all good. I mean, I don't think there's any really bad options that I shared with you today. They're all valid. They're all good. These companies deserve to be out there. They have a reason for being. Some may have introduce new features and become a little more better or desirable than others. Some may get edged out as newer technology takes over and maybe they didn't keep up. It's all possible, but they're all good. Again, my big message regarding your recording software and alternatives to Zoom, and there are many, find what is the best fit for your use case. Find that balance. It's sort of where the 3 considerations meet of quality, of ease of use for you, again, and or your guest or guests, and then cost. And then you weigh those options, choose what works for you, and just go with it. I want you all to record podcasts and put them out there, regardless of how you're doing it, much more than I care about the specific tools you're using to do it. Bring your message to the world. That's my final message, okay? Thanks so much, everyone. Again, you'll find the blog post for this with links to everything I've discussed today on the website, podcastersunited.org, which is sort of the home of Feed Your Brand now. And I'll be back next week with another great episode. Come back and join me then. Thanks so much.
Heard something useful today but didn't have a chance to write it down? No worries. Tom and Tracy have you covered. head to Podetize.com, where you can get free tips, resources, advanced masterclasses, and launch boot camps. While you're there, book a free audit to find out how your podcast scores against the competitors and what you can do about it. Last thing, don't forget to follow Podetize, Tracy Hazzard, and Tom Hazzard on social so you can ask questions during their next live stream. Until next time, keep podcasting.